Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the beginning of our Bhagavad Gita sessions. We'll be beginning with an introduction to the Gita, which will give us a really nice overview of the Bhagavad Gita and what it is. And then successive Tuesdays, we will go chapter by chapter. And I'm hoping that you'll feel free to ask questions. Any questions that may come up, so we can have nice lively dialogues to get everything straight. So welcome everyone, Shri Hari, Rose, Joanna, Bharat, Jai Krishna, and Trish. Welcome to all of you for coming this evening. Today is our opening session, Tuesday, February 25th, 2025. Let's begin. Traditionally, with Bhagavad Gita, there are meditations that we open up with in order to set the mood and set the intention. So I'm going to chant these few mantras just to set the mood. And basically, there are 6 mantras which will demonstrate our appreciation, our gratitude for those who have inspired us on our journey. And the yoga of bhakti is a yoga of gratitude and respect. So traditionally, we open up showing our respect to our teachers, our teacher or teachers who have given us the inspiration to continue with our journey. So I'll begin thus. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Jena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Namai Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastatya Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Glorious evening to start. Beautiful evening here in Boca Raton, Florida, and many of you are in this area, or even better, like Jai Krishna in Dominican Republic on the beach. So welcome to all of you. Thank you for giving me your association, because actually the whole system of bhakti is based on association. It's one of the principal aspects in terms of the progress of bhakti yoga, is to have some inspiration, and by virtue of that inspiration to seek out association with people that are like-minded and people that are advanced spiritually and can understand the wisdom that we have been so blessed with in the form of Bhagavad Gita and other sacred texts. So we're focusing on the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad meaning Bhagavan, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Gita meaning the song. So it is the song of Krishna, who is relaying not only a message to Arjuna, but this is a message for humanity. So we have the dialogue, basically the setting is a dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna. The Bhagavad Gita is composed primarily of two dialogues. A primary dialogue, which is most of the over 700 verses are spoken by either Krishna or Arjuna, with Krishna, of course, speaking the most amount of wisdom in the Bhagavad Gita. And then so that's the primary dialogue. And I'll explain a little bit about that. And the secondary dialogue is between the king, Dhritarashtra, who is a good distance from where this is actually taking place, on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. He's in Hastinapur, which is a good distance away, and he's in the association of his teacher, Sanjaya. And Sanjaya is a very special teacher. He is gifted with an immense amount of wisdom and realization, and he also has the ability to be there, to be present, even though the conversation between Krishna and Arjuna is a distance away. Sanjaya has the ability, the psychic and spiritual ability, to be present during that conversation. So let's talk a little bit about the setting of the conversation. The conversation is, and this is one of the first things I grappled with when I was first reading Bhagavad Gita way back in it was either my sophomore or junior year in college. I went to Albright College in Reading, Pennsylvania. So around 1970, 71, I took a course called the Epic Poetry course. I was an English major. And one of the books that we studied, lo and behold, happened to be the Bhagavad Gita, along with Beowulf and the Odyssey and the Iliad and other epic poems that are, world classics. But I noticed a difference between Bhagavad Gita and Beowulf, for instance, or even the Odyssey and the Iliad, in the sense that dialogue, that epic poem, was geared towards meditation and self-realization. Now, at that time, I was just getting into meditation, so quite naturally, it piqued my curiosity beyond belief, the fact that I was sitting in an English class and epic poetry class and reading this book, this classic spiritual yoga book called the Bhagavad Gita. So the Bhagavad Gita is a classic text spoken over 5,000 years ago, Krishna to Arjuna. Now, what the backdrop is, let's get into the backdrop. Some of you may already know this, others not. But the backdrop is, there is a family, the Kuru dynasty. And the Kuru dynasty, this very powerful dynasty of leaders, had a division of that dynasty called the Pandavas, Pandu. The emperor at the time was Emperor Pandu, but he died prematurely. So, as is the case when you have kings or emperors, you always have a succession. Who is going to inherit the throne? So in Pandu's case, when he passed away at an early age, he had 5 sons: Yudhisthira, Bhima, Arjuna, Nakala, and Sahadev. Those 5 boys. Now, the oldest of the 5 was Yudhisthira, and so he was the heir apparent. the four brothers were to be his ministers, to be his support system, and to help him in the various aspects of governance. But they were too young. The emperor was gone. The heirs were too young to actually take the throne. So what to do? So when there was a meeting of the various elders of this particular family, and they decided that while these boys, the heirs to the throne, the Pandavas, while they were growing up and being educated, they would be under the care of Pandu, the emperor who died prematurely. He had a brother whose name was Dhritarashtra. Now don't get bewildered by the names. You can read the names in the Bhagavad Gita, but understand that Dhritarashtra was the brother of the emperor who passed away, Pandu, and he was put in charge of the five boys. He was their uncle, so it was quite a natural relationship between Dhritarashtra and his five nephews. Now, normally that would be the case. Dhritarashtra was also made interim king, which was also a natural occurrence. So the fact that Dhritarashtra was interim king, and interim does mean interim just for a brief period of time, and B, he was the caregiver, keeper of the five young boys, and his responsibility was to make sure that they had proper education and proper training as Kshatriyas or as warriors, etc. So those were his two main responsibilities: to be the interim king and to also be the caregiver of the five Pandava brothers who were the actual heirs to the throne and eventually would take over the throne. However, the arrangement was natural and quite logical. There's another factor that complicates. The factor that complicates the matter is Dhritarashtra also had children. He had 100 sons and a daughter. And of the 100 sons, the eldest, Duryodhan, was more or less the leader. I mean, in India, in that particular time and place and culture, the oldest son is considered almost like the father. So Duryodhan was not only by culture in that position, he was also a very strong individual, strong-willed, powerful. He was a powerful fighter, and he was a natural-born leader. So he was the leader of the sons of Dhritarashtra. However, he had a strong dislike for his cousins, the five Pandavas, and he also had an even stronger desire to be the emperor. So right from the beginning of the greater text, the overall text, which is called the Mahabharata, Bhagavad Gita is actually an excerpt. It's a philosophical excerpt from the book called the Mahabharata, which is the history of greater India. So this particular time and place and culture, Duryodhan was in charge of his brothers. Duryodhan did not like his cousins and was also envious of the fact that they would be the heirs to the throne, and he would be, in his mind, he would be second rate, on the lower end of the totem pole as far as leadership in the Kuru dynasty. So from the beginning in the Mahabharata, when we meet these various personalities, Duryodhan begins his campaign to get rid of his cousins so that he can take over the throne. His father, the interim king, would be installed as the king, and of course, he, being the eldest son, would take over when his father retired from his position. So Duryodhan wants to get rid of the Pandavas. And he tries many, many different ways to assassinate them. He tries to assassinate them, and then eventually he only succeeds in exiling them. So he tries very hard to position himself where he usurps the throne from the five boys. But that, as destiny has it, destiny is described as the language of God. So as destiny has it, all of his attempts to rid himself of the Pandavas and their influence fail, with ultimately, and I'm making a very long story short here, abbreviated, because we're getting into the Bhagavad Gita. So what happens is all of his attempts to get rid of the five Pandava brothers fail. And eventually they come back into their position. They're right now, I guess, when this is occurring, they get to be in their 30s. And they are now in a position to take over the throne. They are highly trained and accomplished warriors. They're extremely noble, moral, spiritual individuals. They are compassionate. They imbibe all of the qualities in the Vedas that a leader should have. Right now, in our world, in our culture, and in the Western world in particular, and in our culture, leadership is based on popularity vote. If it's a democracy. If it's not a democracy, if it's communism, then someone's installed in that position or takes over that position, etc. But in any case, when we talk about qualifications of leadership, they do not align with what is in Bhagavad Gita, what is in the Vedic literatures, as far as who is qualified to be a leader. And one of the qualifications is dharma. They have to be dharmic individual. Dharmic means responsible, duty. They're duty bound. And dharma has different meanings in terms of different types of applications. There's dharma that we have while we're in this body, and there's dharma of the soul, an eternal dharma, an eternal position of the soul. So they have to be dharmic. They have to be learned, spiritually learned. They have to be spiritual themselves. In fact, the term that's used in the Bhagavad Gita when it addresses these kings who are to be in leadership positions, it's Rajarshis. And Rajarshi is two different Sanskrit words, Raja, which means king, and Rishi, which means like saintly personality. So in order to be a king, the qualification is that they're Rajarshis. They not only have the qualifications, material qualifications, they're good warriors, they're compassionate towards their citizenry, and they're moralistic, they're dharmic, they're duty bound, they're responsible, but they're also spiritually advanced individuals. Now the five Pandava brothers met that criteria. Duryodhana, on the other hand, and his brothers, his 99 brothers, did not, because basically their whole motivation was to be in charge, to be the king, and to take over the whole empire for their own benefit. As far as the other qualifications of compassion, for citizenry and all saintliness, and the ability to always want to do the right thing, the beneficial thing for humanity. They did not have that. Therefore, they were not qualified. But yet, they tried to usurp the throne. Eventually, now I'm fast forwarding it because I don't want to get too lost in the Mahabharata story. Eventually, what happens is there's confrontation. First, there is an attempt at diplomacy. The Pandavas try in a diplomatic way, with Krishna as the primary representative of the Pandavas and their interests. They tried through diplomatic means to settle the whole situation without any bloodshed. But it doesn't work, no matter how hard they try, and no matter how willing they are to make concessions, they are not successful. The Duryodhana and his brothers want no part of it. The father, Dhritarashtra, who's the king, is totally supportive of his sons. And even though he knows what is the right thing, and there are many indications throughout the Mahabharata that Dhritarashtra knows what the right thing is, he's simply out of sentiment for his sons. He simply does not do the right thing. He supports his son Duryodhana and all of his nefarious activities to try to take the throne from the Pandava boys. So when they're negotiating, ultimately what it boils down to in Duryodhana's case, he just says, no way, Jose, I'm not going to give you anything. Even though it was rightfully, the entire empire was rightfully the Pandavas were willing to concede 50% of the empire. So 50% would go to one half of the family, represented by Duryodhana and his father Dhritarashtra, and the other 50% would go to them. They were giving up 50%. And when we talk about the Bharatvarsha, or that empire, we're talking about not just India. We're talking about, at that particular point in time, it was vast. I mean, you even see remnants of Vedic culture in Cambodia and other places in the world, in Malaysia, Indonesia, in Bali. You go to Bali, and Ram is all over Bali. So you can understand that the influence of the Vedic culture within Bharatvarsha, or the land of Bharat, the empire that we're talking about here in the Mahabharata, was vast. But the Pandavas, because of their nobility, because of their honesty, because of their compassion, they did not want to see war between family members. So they were willing to make concessions. But lo and behold, Duryodhana refused every offer, every concession that the Pandavas offered, and eventually, when Krishna went back the final time to the Pandavas, he said, there is no other recourse other than war. Now, people have a hard time wrapping their mind around the fact that the greatest yoga text in the world, which is promoting spiritual bliss and peace and harmony, was delivered on the battlefield. But this has many reasons for it. First and foremost, the historical reason was there was an attempt to negotiate. There was an attempt at diplomacy, but it did not work. It was the duty of the Pandavas, because they are leaders, because they are dharmic. It was their dharma to protect the citizenry from the greed and the cruelty of Duryodhana. So they just couldn't walk away and say, oh, okay, we'll go conquer some other place. Let them have it. I don't want to fight it. No, out of their duty, and Krishna reminded them of this, that their duty was to protect Kshatriya, the warrior class of men. Their whole responsibility was to protect the citizens. I mean, we can see that in our own culture. We have a police department that is supposed to protect the municipality. We have a military that's supposed to protect the nation, and they're given some license, in terms of their, to execute their responsibility. They're given license, and the license is when they go into war, they go into battle, they are able to fight and to kill. So even though the Pandavas did not want to do this, it was their only way, it was the only way that they had at their disposal to fulfill their dharma, to fulfill their duty of protecting the citizenry and to become the rightful leaders of Bharatvarsha, the land of India, the empire of Greater India. So that's where we're at right now. Bhagavad Gita is when the two forces, the two sides of the family that are going to fight. Now, on Duryodhana's side, he has more materially, he's set up better. He has more leaders and soldiers on his side than the Pandavas. The Pandavas are outnumbered, are outmanned. They have good leadership. They have noble leadership also, but they're at a disadvantage, right? So the battle is about to take place. Before the battle takes place, Arjuna tells Krishna, I would like to see who, I'm one of the generals here. I want to see, what I'm facing here. Now, take into consideration the fact that Krishna, who is considered Bhagavan, or the supreme Ishwara, the supreme controller, the supreme being, he is performing his pastime here on earth. And part of his lila, or his pastime, is to be involved in this in a way that demonstrates to humanity that even God can be humble. So Krishna says, I won't fight on either side. I won't do that. I have a vast army. I'll just give you the choice. Duryodhana and Arjuna were the two negotiating factors for each side of the family. I'll give you the choice. You can have me, but I won't fight. I'll do something, menial, or you can have my vast army. So, as one of the indicators of Duryodhana's personality, of course, what does he want? He wants the vast army, Arjuna can have Krishna. But Arjuna, knowing of Krishna as the supreme, he wants Krishna. So Krishna makes an arrangement. He said, look, I'm going to take a nap. And when I wake up, the first one I see, either you, Arjuna, or you, Duryodhana, gets to make their choice. So Krishna lies down on his back. Duryodhana situates himself by Krishna's head, thinking that way Krishna will see him as soon as he wakes up. And Arjuna, in the mood of humility, situates himself at Krishna's feet. Because in the Vedic culture, a sign or a symptom of humility is that we bow down to the feet of greater personalities. One thing that always struck me when I became involved in Bhakti Yoga and I became a devotee of Krishna, one of the things I had an opportunity to meet a lot of people from India that had migrated here to the United States. And the one thing that always struck me in the deepest recessions of my heart was the culture and the respect that they had for the elders in the family, whether it be the father or the mother or the grandparents. There was of the utmost respect. So much so that they would, upon seeing the father or the mother, they would bow down and touch their feet to their head. I remember the first time my mother came to visit me. I was living in the ashram, and she came to visit me, and she's your typical New Jersey lady, born 1922 in an Italian family, raised in the United States, and so this culture, the Vedic culture, she wasn't aware of at all. So she came to visit me, and I had a position in the ashram of authority. So when my mother walked into the ashram, everyone paid their respects to her. And my mother was just like standing there like, what is this? She never had that happen to her in her life. But just to show you the degree of honor and respect and gratitude, which is so much part of the culture. So Arjuna, being the quintessential example of Vedic culture, he chose to be at Krishna's feet. So when Krishna wakes up from his nap, what does he do? Does he look at Duryodhana to the side? No, he sits up. And who's sitting at his feet? Arjuna. So immediately he sees Arjuna, so he says, oh, Arjuna, you're the first one I see. You get to choose. What do you want? My army or me? So Arjuna immediately says, no one other than you, Krishna. You please be on our side. Duryodhana was like totally ecstatic. His joy knew no bounds, because now he realized, oh, I've got Krishna's vast army. Now the Pandavas, they don't have a chance against my might, my force. And so Krishna says to Arjuna, you remember, if you choose me, I'm not going to fight. Even though I can annihilate the whole other side myself, I'm not going to raise a sword, an arrow, or a spear. I'll do whatever you want me to do. So Arjuna says to Krishna, just be with me. Be my chariot driver. So Krishna agrees. He's the chariot driver of Arjuna. Arjuna, when the two forces, if any of you have ever seen the movie, what's it called? What's that movie with Mel Gibson? When he was
Braveheart.
Braveheart. Thank you, sir. You see that when the English and the Scottish and Irish are lining up to fight, that will give you a visual of what was going on there. Both armies, vast armies, powerful armies, they're lined up again. They're ready to fight. They're banging their spears and their shields, and they're ready to go to war. And Arjuna tells Krishna, pull me in front, I want to see. Now Krishna is very clever. He pulls the chariot right in front of the army, where all of the important personalities and personalities that are close to the Pandavas, like Pandava's grandsire, Bhishma, the Pandavas' martial arts teacher, Dronacharya, his cousins, Duryodhana and his 99 brothers. All of these different friends, family, teachers are in this one section. That's where Krishna pulls the chariot, so that Arjuna sees that. So Arjuna sees who he has to fight, and then we have the opening dialogue of the Bhagavad Gita, and there is the setting. They're on the battlefield. Krishna and Arjuna are facing the opposing party. Arjuna is observing everyone there, and then we'll talk about the first chapter, but now I'll continue with the introduction. There are some new people here: Joanna, Amy, Trish. If any of you have any questions about what I just said, about the history of the Bhagavad Gita, feel free to ask. Rose, if you also have any questions. I know Shakti, Bharat, Srihari, Jai Krishna are aware of the history. So if any of you ladies have any questions regarding what I just said, please feel free to ask. If not, I'll just continue. Okay, you good? We'll continue. So, as we said, we'll get into the introduction of Bhagavad Gita. We said the Bhagavad Gita is an excerpt from the Mahabharata, and this particular time period is a very crucial time period. It's the beginning of the age of Kali. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard of Kali Yuga, the yugas. That basically is the way the universal time is broken up. And you can think of the seasons, winter, spring, summer, fall. So it's kind of parallel to that. The universal time period has 4 different periods. It has Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, and Kali Yuga. which is the last. Kali is the last. It's kind of like the winter season. It's the least conducive time for spiritual advancement. And guess what, folks? We're right in the middle of it. We're right in the middle of Kali Yuga. So this time period is being ushered in around this time of the Battle of Kurukshetra. So the dialogues we spoke about, I spoke about the primary dialogue. The secondary dialogue is between Dhritarashtra. He's the king. He's also blind, and it's described that is why he is disqualified from becoming the emperor. Not only because he's physically blind, but because he's also spiritually blind. So that blindness to right and wrong disqualified him, and eventually that is why he never truly becomes the emperor of Bharatvarsha. So he is part of the second dialogue, the secondary dialogue between him and our Sanjaya. Sanjaya is his teacher. Sanjaya is a student of Vyasadeva, who is also the compiler of the Vedic literatures and the Mahabharata. So Sanjaya is an extremely learned and spiritually pure individual. So he has the ability, Sanjaya does, to go into mystic trance and to see what is actually taking place on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Even though they are nowhere near it, he's able to have the vision of what's going on, and he relays what is transpiring on the battlefield of Kurukshetra to Dhritarashtra. So you have some different interjections during the course of the Bhagavad Gita between Sanjaya and Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra primarily in asking questions, like the first verse of the Bhagavad Gita is a question by Dhritarashtra. So we get the opening. And in chapter 1, Dhritarashtra Uvacha, that means Dhritarashtra asks or says, O Sanjaya, after my sons, that's Duryodhana and his brothers, and the sons of Pandu, that's Arjuna, Yudhisthira, Bhima, Nakula, and Sahadeva, the Pandavas, the heirs, the rightful heirs of the throne. After my sons and the sons of Pandu, the Pandavas, assembled in the place of pilgrimage, Kurukshetra, desiring to fight, what did they do? So that's the opening statement, and that comes from the secondary dialogue, which is coming between Dhritarashtra and Sanjaya. So that question is being asked, and through the first chapter, he answers that question. The Bhagavad Gita is also known as the Gita Upanishad. The Upanishads, if any of you have ever read the Upanishads, right? The Upanishads primarily deal with Jnana Yoga, the knowledge, understanding what is Brahman, what is the nature of the self, etc. And it can be quite esoteric and quite difficult to understand. Without a teacher, impossible. Just like in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, I know some of you have read the Yoga Sutras. So just like in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, if you really don't have a teacher guiding you through that, very difficult to unpack those sutras. So traditionally, the sacred texts are studied with a teacher, a qualified teacher. So the Bhagavad Gita is a book that can be difficult to understand without the knowledge, the wisdom, and the experience of a teacher. So Bhagavad Gita is known as the Gita Upanishad. Why? Because the Upanishad is kind of like the essence of the Vedic wisdom, the essence of the Upanishads. And it's spoken in such a concise, clear way. There's no question. When you actually, and hopefully many of you will stay with me during the course of our study, you will see some very difficult topics to understand will be explained very clearly and very simply and to the point by Krishna to Arjuna. So that is why this text, the Bhagavad Gita, has been extant for thousands of years. It's not just something that came into fad and fashion, because yoga became popular and now the Gita. No, the Gita has been studied for thousands of years. So much so that finally, in the late 1600s, the Gita was only in either Sanskrit or some local dialects of India. The rest of the world was not exposed to the deep, profound wisdom of Bhagavad Gita. But in the late 1600s, due to the efforts of a British scholar, it was finally translated into English. So that depth of understanding and knowledge that is there, and clarity of perspective on spirituality and what is yoga and what is the point of yoga, what is the goal of yoga. When we do yoga, when we perform yoga, it is really important to understand what is its goal. I mean, really, in anything that we do, we want to know, we want to have a determination of what is the goal. So particularly yoga, performing of yoga, it's no coincidence that both in Bhagavad Gita and in the Yoga Sutras, asana is only mentioned just a few times. I think 3 times in the Yoga Sutras and maybe twice in the Bhagavad Gita. There is not emphasis on asana. There is use of asana, use of the various postures that one performs. And I'll tell you, in the very traditional yoga systems, there's only really 10, 12 different asanas that were taught. All the other ones that come out in modern day yoga is due to the influence. British had a great influence on it with calisthenics. And, there are other influences that have come upon it. But really, yoga and asana it was very simple, and it was meant to be able to have the yogi or the yoga practitioner sit comfortably. That is the definition of asana, is to sit comfortably. So if you're going to do, like in the Hatha Yoga Tipika, it says that if you're to perform Hatha Yoga, that the goal of Hatha Yoga is Raja Yoga. And Raja Yoga basically is another name for meditation. That the real goal of yoga is to be able to sit comfortably so you can enter into a state of meditation. That we have the yamas, niyamas, pranayama, asana, the 4 things externally that we try to develop and cultivate, and then the internal, pratyahara, being able to withdraw the senses within, dharana, concentration, and when you get into deep concentration, it's called dhyana or meditation, and ultimately it ends up in samadhi, when one is fully absorbed in the meditation, in their object of meditation. So this yoga system, as being taught in the Bhagavad Gita, is to give us an understanding of what is the goal and what is the purpose. So Gita Upanishad, or the Bhagavad Gita, or the summary or the essence of Vedic wisdom, particularly in the Upanishads, the spiritual, the deeply spiritual aspect of the Vedas, the Gita Upanishad is delivered by Krishna in order to make everything crystal clear, to clarify it as much as possibly can, so that we know and have the inspiration which comes from this wisdom to perform yoga. Why? And the whys and wherefores. in terms of performing yoga. So the Gita is also called Gita Upanishad, the essence of the Vedic literatures. There is a spirit, there's a general theme or a spirit of the Bhagavad Gita. It's just like if you are ill, right? And you approach a physician, and the physician gives you a prescription, and that prescription, within that prescription is how to take it. You need to take the medicine in a particular way. You just don't take a whole bottle of whatever is given you and you chug it. No, it says on the label, according to the directions of the physician, it says on the label, take one in the morning, one in the evening, or take one first thing in the daytime, or take one last thing in the evening. It gives you directions how to take the medicine. So the spirit of the Gita is the directions, the universal principles that can give humanity the opportunity to reach its highest goal. Yoga is a system or discipline which affords humanity the opportunity to achieve its highest goal. Now, that may be a relative statement, but specific to yoga and more specifically to Bhagavad Gita, the highest goal for the human being is to use human intelligence to understand preliminarily what is the purpose of life. What is the purpose of my human form of life as separate and distinct from animal life? Animals eat, sleep, mate, and defend. Human beings eat, sleep, mate, and defend. So is there no distinction between animal life and human life? The Vedas, Bhagavad Gita says, yes, there is a distinction. In the human form of life, the human being is endowed with the ability to ask questions, to reason, and to understand its purpose in being here. Whereas the animals are very adept at eating, sleeping, mating, and defending themselves according to their species. They're equipped with fangs and claws and certain degree of strength and speed and agility, etc. They're very equipped, and they can sleep anywhere. You see a dog can sleep as comfortably on the floor as you are, and probably even more than you are comfortably in your number bed. You've got your number bed and you're playing around. I'll be best in number 4. The dog doesn't need a number bed. The dog can lie down and go to sleep. So they're very adept at eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, much more than even we are as human beings. What they're not adept at is asking crucial questions that can help us become free from the suffering condition of life. Who am I? What is my purpose in being here? This is actually symptom of and the beginning of the manifestation of consciousness of a human being. When we ask those questions, this, according to the Vedas, is really when human potential is being manifest to its fullest. So the Bhagavad Gita is meant to cultivate the human potential to a degree where it can understand its purpose of life. And preliminarily, who am I? That's why in Krishna's opening teachings to Arjuna, which is really the second chapter. The first chapter is you are introduced to various personalities, and you're introduced to Arjuna and Arjuna's dilemma, and the result of Arjuna's dilemma, how he becomes depressed, etc. And then beginning of the second chapter, where Arjuna realizes that he's depressed, realizes that he's getting lost, he's not understanding his purpose, he's not understanding his dharma, his duty, and needs help. And then he approaches Krishna as his teacher. So This is to teach us, to instruct us, to demonstrate to us that as human beings, we are blessed. We are blessed with the ability to sit here in Bhagavad Gita. You guys can be doing so many things other than sitting on Zoom and watching me and hearing me, recount the Bhagavad Gita to you. Made that choice. And that demonstrates fully human potential being exercised to its fullest. Because now you're trying to understand the nature and the purpose of human life. And that's why Krishna, when Krishna deals with Arjuna and his dilemma, he doesn't give him Xanax. He doesn't, try to pacify him. He gives him the truth, universal wisdom. He gives him the truth. Like Nasato vidyate bhavo vidyate. I forget the second line. But it means that what is illusion is that which has no duration. And what is reality is that which has no cessation. So that's a powerful statement. Krishna is saying that if you are absorbed, if you're using your human potential only for temporary gratification, the temporary gratification that of the senses and the mind, etc., of the body, then you're living in illusion, because that is not who we are. We're not these temporary bodies. Right now, it's a part of our story. It's a part of what we have accumulated. Our bodies and our mindsets are the result of our karma, what we've accumulated over our previous lives. But it is not who we are. That is why, who wants to die? Does anyone really want to die other than someone that may be extremely troubled and want to commit suicide? But other than that, why do we have this gnawing sensation that I don't want to die, I want to live forever? Where does that come from? If we were only this mass of chemicals, mass of cells that we call our body and our mind, then it would be quite normal and quite natural for us to die, because it's normal and natural to take birth. It's normal and natural to grow, to develop, to eventually begin to age and deteriorate and finally death. That's the normal progress of the body that we have. But we don't accept that. We want to live with our consciousness. We want to maintain this consciousness. We want to maintain this awareness of others and relationships and love and all of these things that we have found so delightful, so enjoyable in our life. And even as I've mentioned this before, the psychologists are determining what are the principles through their research which is making a person happy. And one of the first and foremost principles that they came up with is relationship. That when people have good relationships in their life, they have a good relationship with their parents, they have a good relationship with their siblings, they have a good relationship with their friends, they have good relationships with other aspects of their society, that to the degree that they've incorporated that in their life, that is the degree that they experience happiness. The 85-year study out of Harvard University on the principles of happiness, that is their first and foremost statement in terms of what they have found in their 85-year research, what has made a person happy. For instance, retirees. Do retirees, people who retire, do they miss their work? Maybe. Maybe in some cases they miss their work. But in most cases, they miss the socialization that they have. They miss the constant interaction that they have with people. And especially if you're a people person and you do sales or you do teaching or whatever you may do that puts you in contact with the public. This is, to a great degree, satisfying. And that's one of the hardest things that people who retire grapple with, that they're drawn out of the workforce, the 8 hours of the interaction. And, they, in some instances, they recede into loneliness, which doesn't have to be there. I mean, intelligent people, they know how to make that up. The loss of that social interaction that they got through their work, they do various kinds of things. They continue challenging themselves. That's one of the important factors of life. You have to continue challenging yourself, fresh things, new things, not just become, sedentary. So that the mind continually is active in this way. So the Bhagavad Gita, in the second chapter, how does Krishna deal with Arjuna's depression? He explains to him the distinction between body, mind, intellect, ego, and the self and the soul. What is the soul? We can become highly attuned to our body and our bodily needs, our sensory needs, etc. We can take it a step further and understand the workings of our mind and try to deal with that in our intellect. If we're really advanced, we can take a step further and understand where my ego comes into play, how it interferes, how it doesn't interfere, how it enhances, etc. But we're not complete in terms of our wisdom, in terms of our knowledge. The completion comes when, according to Bhagavad Gita, when we understand and live according to the true nature of the self, which is the spirit. So the spirit of the Gita is to hear in a submissive mood and try to understand the distinction between matter and spirit. In the Garuda Purana, there is what we call the Vedas, not Vedas with a V, Vedas with a B, Bhedas, Vedas, the 5 Vedas. And that is basically understanding the distinction between God and the soul. The distinction between one soul and another soul. The distinction between soul and matter. The distinction between God and matter. And the various distinctions within matter. Matter and matter, different terms. Like in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and ego. These 8 elements comprise my material energy. So one who has learned it understands that this matter, inert matter, non-motivated matter, is comprised of those various elements. So again, God and the soul, understanding that distinction. The one soul and another, the distinction between you and me and everyone else around us, understanding the distinction in that. The distinction between the soul and the constitutional nature of the soul and matter. And that gives us insight to the distinction between who we are, because according to Bhagavad Gita, the soul emanates consciousness, not the body, not the mind, not the intellect, not the ego, but awareness, consciousness, how those elements matter. How is matter motivated? How does matter take form? Either there's atrophy or syncrophy. Atrophy means matter breaks down. Why does matter break down? Let's put it in context of our body. Matter breaks down because the soul is no longer present. That is described as death, that the soul is no longer present. What is syncrophy? Syncrophy means when it comes together. When does it come together? When the sperm, which is carrying the soul, unites with the ovum, pierces the protein covering of the ovum, enters, connects, and then you have formation. Then, due to the presence of consciousness, a lump of cells take form, grow, and develop. So, Bhagavad Gita, in the second chapter, it's a very important chapter, and you see it's how Krishna deals with Arjuna and his depression. So, it is 8 o'clock. I promise you that I will begin at 7 and end at 8. So, I will ask up to this point. We will continue from where we left off in our next session, next Tuesday at 7 p.m. But if anyone has any question as to what I've shared with you so far, I'd be happy to entertain any question. And if not, we can end the session. Anyone?
Hey, can I make a comment?
You certainly can.
Thank you, Laksmi. I just want to say I've been attending and listening to your lectures and classes since you lived in Puerto Rico, and your knowledge of Shastra and the way you deliver and explain it logically and intelligently is refreshing. Because I've been around the movement many decades myself, and I really look forward to your classes, especially here in the Caribbean. There's not a lot of association, so I just want to say thank you very much for all these years.
Thank you, Jai Krishna, for your words of gratitude. I appreciate that. Joanna, did you want to say something? No? Anyone else would like to
Thank you. Sorry, Lakshmi. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. I met Joanna and Amy at the yoga teacher training course that we just did on Sunday. They are yoga teachers in training and soon to be knighted, the yoga teacher. and I guess it's in March, right? You get your certification. So thanks, God, for attending this evening. I greatly appreciate that. And
thank you, Lakshmi.
I hope Amy and Joanna would help bring a little bit more together. In the 2-hour course, it's hard to bring it all together. I hope this was, helped you to make more sense of what we discussed on Sunday.
I'm very interested to hear more.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Joshua, thank you. Always great to, I met Joshua at Kirtan here at my house, and we hit it off immediately. And he's a wonderful Kirtaniya in his own right. And thank you for honoring this session with your presence. How's Canada? You're up in Canada. And Trish, also met Trish at Kirtan. Thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm very excited to learn more about the sacred texts on my bhakti journey.
Wonderful, thank you. So we'll be here every Tuesday. And everyone else, Jai Krishna,
Thank you so much.
You are welcome.
Wonderful to see you.
Thank you. I hope you're staying warm.
Pardon me?
I said, I hope you're staying warm. Are you up in Canada?
Yeah, I am. I've got a mantra on right now. as you're teaching here. But yeah, it's actually warm today. Well, warm for Canada. It's 4 degrees Celsius.
Is
Well-
that you, National Lucinko?
Yeah. Hey, how are you? Can you see me?
No, you're
Oh.
You're not, you don't have your video going.
I live in Orlando. Josh
Hey.
lives in Canada. We met with in Vermont last summer, and Josh was just at my house when he
Oh,
was.
wonderful.
So
Do you guys know each other?
we do know it. We have played kirtan together and jammed out together, and
Yeah.
And there he is.
Hello.
And now you're together.
who knew? I walk into Sid's home, and here you are.
It's a beautiful thing. So thankful for all the beautiful connections created in the last little while. Just so wonderful. Mhm.
Thanks to modern day technology that we're able to do this and
Yes.
share in this way. You know, it's wonderful. It has its downside, but this is certainly its upside. And I greatly appreciate that you all took the time to be with me this evening and hopefully further down the line too, so we can go through the Gita together. And every time I read the Gita, it's been 53 years now that I've been reading, 53, 54 years.
Wow.
And every time I read it, another revelation comes of it. And that's the Gita journey. So welcome aboard. And I hope to see you in the upcoming Tuesdays. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Puni.
So look
Okay.
forward to it. You've answered a prayer for me. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. We'll see you guys.